Barely 4 weeks into office, President Trump slid back into campaign mode on Thursday. The president's announcement of his latest labor secretary pick became a freewheeling news conference, echoing the combativeness of candidate Trump. After insisting he was having a very good time, he took the opportunity to attack the media and defend the pacing of his administration's agenda as he sees it.
We have made incredible progress. I don't think there's ever been a president elected who in this short period of time has done what we've done. I inherited a mess. It's a mess. I'm keeping my promises to the American people. These are campaign promises. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine, despite the fact that I can't get my cabinet approved. We lived in a divided nation. And I am going to try. I will do everything within my power to fix that.
Ramesh Ponnuru is in Washington. He's a senior editor for National Review, a columnist for Bloomberg View, and a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Ramesh, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be on.
So, Ramesh, at Thursday's news conference, we saw the president looking to take back control of the narrative around his administration. Setting aside the rhetoric for a minute, how do conservatives feel about the president's agenda so far?
Well, conservatives are ecstatic, I think it's fair to say, about his nomination of Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. They are supportive of most of his cabinet appointments, and they are backing him on replacing Obamacare and reforming and cutting taxes. But there is beginning to be some impatience and some wondering when some of those promises are going to be made good on.
Well, the president, is touting what he says is incredible progress, saying there hasn't been a president elected who has done what we've done. So the core question for people supporting him and expecting results from him is, at what point is he going to deliver on the promises he campaigned on? How do you see this playing long term with voters?
Well, at his press conference, the president simultaneously said that he's accomplished more than most presidents at this point in time, and that he doesn't have his cabinet in place, and that Congress has been slow-walking his cabinet appointments. There's a conflict here. I think that the second take is the more accurate one. The Republicans in Congress are not sure what to do on taxes. They're not sure what to do on health care. And at a certain point, the fact that President Trump is in charge is going to mean that he's responsible for some of these outcomes.
Yeah, I want to get to tax reform and health care in just a bit. But first, the counter narrative here, of course, is that the president is not experiencing smooth sailing here. And as a result, he's asserting that he's in control, as we heard during the news conference, and that he's going to win out over others' agendas. But that all hinges on what he winds up accomplishing and if Americans come on board with what he's doing. Do you see these types of performances, like what we saw on Thursday, as the correct strategy for facilitating what needs to get done?
Well, the president clearly enjoys this kind of press conference where he gets to tell off his critics and people that he sees as his critics in the press. Most people, according to a new Pew poll, do not see Trump as a great communicator. It's one of the things that he has the worst ratings on. And of course, most people don't seem to approve of the job that he's doing. But it may be that President Trump views communicating with his core supporters as his key task here. And on that, he may have succeeded.
Well, in a recent piece for Bloomberg, you argue that the president and his administration have failed two tests of judgment and competence so far. What are the potential repercussions of that?
Well, the president said that he is running a finely tuned machine. I think that is very hard to maintain when you have a national security advisor who can't last for a month in the job before being asked to resign. I mentioned another incident where his Secretary of State wanted a deputy. He met with Trump. Things seemed to go well. And then afterward, Trump found out that the deputy nominee had been critical of him in 2016, and he nixed the appointment. That is something that is suggestive of extremely poor staff work. Things should never get to that point in the process if that's the way the president wants things to be run.
Well, in thinking about the case of General Flynn's resignation specifically, the president said Thursday that he was, quote, doing his job, but that he didn't tell the VP the facts, and then he didn't remember, and that wasn't acceptable. Flynn was very much a loyalist, of course, in the Trump White House. How do you see the importance the president places on loyalty as a potential challenge going forward?
Well, there's no question that this president, like all presidents, but perhaps to a higher degree, values loyalty, wants loyalty to him and to his inner circle. The thing is, with General Flynn, there were a lot of warnings. He did have a reputation where people were wondering whether he had the temperament for the job. So it's not as though the fact that there were problems came out of the clear blue sky.
The president teased a new executive order on immigration next week and claimed that the initial order had a smooth rollout but a bad chord. How does he recover from the fallout over the initial order? Do you think that issuing a new order is the necessary next step?
I do think that it is the best option available to the president now. You have to wonder, though, whether any executive order that he issues on immigration is going to pass muster with the courts. They've already said that his past statements about Muslims and Muslim immigration specifically render suspect anything that he has to say on this now.
All right, before you go, I want to ask you about health care and tax reform, two things you mentioned off the top. The president said Thursday, we've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare. We are deep in tax reform discussions. But he recently indicated in an interview with Fox News that health care reform could come in 2018. What is it, Ramesh, that you're hearing from Republicans? Do they believe that comprehensive change will come soon? And should both reforms be delayed, how will that be received within his base, you think?
I think that these things are both very much up for grabs. The question of what form healthcare reform takes, when it happens, when it's implemented, what the sequencing is with tax reform. I don't think that there is a consensus among Republicans in Congress and with the administration. There's a desire to move quickly, but there's also the lack of consensus that would allow them to move quickly.
All right, Ramesh Ponnuru, thank you so much for your perspective. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.